So we're going to start off with looking at project setup. Um, so I think Steph has introduced you to some of the components that we can be able to use, but you can go through to add other customizations once the project starts going. Um, so there's this interesting feature which actually makes your project quite good in sort of controlling for missing data and missing codes. So we go back to the data, just go back to the project and come back. So if you go to the project, you'll notice that suppose you want to add a new record. Um, there isn't any functionality to, let's say we wanted, what's a good example? Yeah. For example, this question, ever tested for TB, diagnosed with TB? Then the response may be the person is a don't know, but there's no don't know category, or it's invalid. I've never had a TB or, or I've never been diagnosed with TB. I don't know, maybe they forgot. So this is a funny, it might apply to some questions. Okay, like the photophobia question. I think it is. Say suppose someone will say, I don't have a clue if that has happened or not. They should also have an option where they can sort of put some code there, which stands for I don't know, which is outside the scope of these values. So let's go back, and we want to go to project setup, and we want to go to add customizations, and we go down below and we want to add a missing code. Let's say the interviewer want to add an extra. Did you ask the question? Maybe they asked the question, but the respondent had an unknown. So I'll add the ask but unknown category. So when we save this and we go back to our instrument and we want to add a record, and we go back to that category. And now you see we have a missing, sort of missing, because asked asked it, but it was unknown. So the field worker or the research assistant was actually asking the people questions in the field will actually be able to use this functionality in case it's needed. So that's one cool aspect. So also apart from that, you should be able to move your project from development to production once you're satisfied with the progression. I think generally you have to make sure that you sort of satisfy most of the things you can see here. I've requested to move my project from development to production, but the request is still pending on the administrator side. Another key feature that you will definitely use to manage your data is, suppose you want to add someone else to the project. You go to user rights, or you want to change certain rights for people to have limited access to certain instruments. You go to user rights. So once you go into user rights, you have sort of all the role names associated with every person. So you can see that with our project, most of you guys are in the participants. And we've got a data management section, I've got one for PISO. ideally everyone should have different rights depending on what they can access or what they don't have access to. So suppose I wanted to add new features for everyone to have in the participants field. So I'll double click the participant and then we can see that, okay, so these are the, the checks that they have previously. So I'll just add the data quality, you can create and execute rules, and you can also create APIs, and you can also enter data in the Redcap mobile app. So I want to add those features. I've added them. Then I save changes. Do I want you to see all the instruments? Yes, I want you to view all the instruments and edit them. Some instances you might want to blind um, certain people from seeing certain instruments. This is normally the case when you're dealing with projects where they have certain um, classified information that you would want others to see. Normally, when you're having instruments that have sections that clinicians work on and the research assistants work on. So in our case, everyone can view everything, but you might also need to think about that in different project setups. So I'll save those changes. Okay. So we've looked at user changes, and there's another key feature that's quite interesting, which is the logs. So you'll find that in some instances you might get changes happening um, that you're not really quite sure what happened for the data to be changed in a certain way. So you can go to logs to sort of have a compilation of who's been using uh, Redcap on the project and who's been making updates and what have they been doing at what time. So this is sort of something that guides you to sort of see what has been happening throughout the different sessions. So you can sort of go to a time point or look at exactly what has happened. I mean, now it has a lot of prints on what I've done, so it's mostly um, my actions that are sort of engraved here. I did a participant, eight, edit an update, modified project settings. So it sort of gives you a sort of blueprint on who's been doing what. Okay, so we've gone through the logs. So I'm going to go through another feature as well that is quite interesting, which is the data quality. So it's under, you can see it under your applications. And so what this module does, it gives you access to executing certain checks on your data set to see if there are any validations that you need to do. For example, let's say I want to check for blank values. Then you can directly execute. And then you can see that we've got 9,610 blank values. So you can get to view what's actually happening there, which records have that issue. Okay, so let me try to view now. Okay, there we go. So we can see that there for record number 3, yeah, it seems like there's a lot of questions in the socioeconomic status instrument that were not answered. There's no data in there. And for record 7, we can see that they didn't respond to the sex question. What is your gender? What is your sex? So you can also export it as a CSV and send it to the field workers or your RAs who are doing the actual interviews, and they can follow up with these patients to find out if they can get that data into 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 Redcap. Um, but also apart from that, you also have these other additional generic uh, validations which you can always run. But you also have an additional functionality where you can also add your own bespoke validations. So let's say I wanted to validate all people who have an incorrect age, for example. Okay, then I would just say add the rule name, incorrect age, and okay, so then I will type the name of my age variable. It's called age, and it will be incorrect if it's greater than 120. And I'll update that, and I'll add that, and let me execute it to check. Okay, so we've got 173 participants who have an incorrect age. Let's see if it's working properly. Okay, so we've got weird ages here. 155, 170. So these are most usually might definitely be incorrect ages. So you can also do the same procedure, export the values, and give field workers to follow up or turn them into missing values depending on what stage of the project you are at. So this is very useful when you want to sort of have a data validation check that you always run through the system to see what's happening. Um, so another feature that we want to look at is, so when you go to the day record status dashboard, it sort of gives you an overview of what's complete, what's incomplete, and what's unverified, depending on the color of these dots. So it's quite interesting that so this is something that not a lot of a lot of people always think once the green status is green, it means it's complete, which is actually not true. Um, so this is dependent on the field worker saying it's complete to a certain field variable. Once they're satisfied, the last question asks them whether um, the record is complete or not. So I'll go through an example so that you can see. So let me add a new record. Let's do enrollment. So you can see if you scroll down at the bottom, it will tell you is it complete, and you have the option of choosing whether it's complete or not. Suppose I'll say complete. I didn't do anything. I'll say complete, and I'll save and exit the form. And I'll let me ignore and leave the record. So when you go to the record status dashboard, let me see the patient I've added and see all the patients. Okay, then check at the bottom. So you can see that it's complete, but is it really complete? No. So eventually, you also need to double check in some way if your records are indeed complete outside this record status dashboard. So for example, if we go to record 10, you can see that I think all of the questions have been answered. Yes. and it's written incomplete. So it's actually supposed to be complete. So it's worth also double checking if the record says it's complete or it's incomplete, and if that really directly means what you want it to mean. I think it's important to emphasize that with the research assistants or the field workers when they're starting to enroll patients, so that they also know the differences between that those two values. Okay, so let's say enrollment is complete and you're at a certain stage where you want to now create reports. You want to see what's happening. So these are reports section. You you can then go to reports and you can check out. I'll go to edit. So essentially, what you want to do with your reports, maybe you might have certain key attributes for your study that you want to always monitor, and you want to give feedback to your collaborators or PIs on the progress of any of those indicators. So usually you want to look at how many patients have completed the project, um, and also if your project is complicated, you might have certain strata that you want to monitor. So in our study, we are also looking at TB exposed and TB non-exposed patients. So let's say we want to create a new report, and I want to call that report, give it a name, number of TB exposed patients. Okay. And do I want the report to be publicly viewed by anyone with a public link? I'll say yes. And I'll just add a description. Check for patients that have ever been TB exposed or not. Okay. So the next step is for me to select the identifiers that I want to see. I want to definitely see the record ID. What other variable do I need? I also want to check the TB exposed variable ever diagnosed with TB. So that's my key variable in this question. So these are the only fields that I need to create my report. So I want to filter. Okay. In this case, I mean, you might want to say, okay, maybe I just want to look at the TB exposed patients. Then you would add a check, say you check, look for your TB exposed patients, ever diagnosed with TB, and I want only those that have ever been diagnosed with TB, and that completes my filters. And apart from that, I don't want to use anything else. Then I save my report. Then I go to view my report. Okay. So the report already gives me some data that I can see. So out of the 900 patients, we have 257 that have reported that they've been ever exposed to TB. Suppose I wanted to say, okay, I've developed this. I think I might need six to see how TB exposure is different by six. So I'll go back to my report. I go to edit, and I'll say, let's also include the sex variable. Let's also add the sex variable. Okay. So add the sex variable there. And I'll save my report. Let me view my report. So now we can also see the sex of the patients who reported to be TB diagnosed, ever been diagnosed with TB. So you can also go to stats and charts, which gives you a broader outlook. Let me just go into stats and charts. So it is here on the first slide, gives you sort of a breakdown on the number of people, which is 257, and it also gives you a breakdown of those people by sex. So we can see that more or less people have been equally represented across the groups. So you can get a visual sort of image on how that looks. Let's say you also want to maybe report that information to someone, then you can hit the export data tab and you can export that data to someone else. So that's sort of more or less what we'll see on the report. So you can also see there's a completion rate report there. You can create your own and play around with it to see how you can manipulate it. So in some cases you might want complicated visuals around progress, to check the progress of your study. So you might utilize the API functionality that we passed through in the presentation. So you go to APIs, you request an API. Once the API is generated, you go to software of your choice. Let's say I wanted to look at something in R, and I wanted to check, maybe I want to see how the age is distributed across different genders. Then I'll go to copy my API, open R, and write the script to sort of get access to my API and write the script that sort of creates my visual. And once I've created my visual, then you can see the final visualization. It gives you the number of participants and the age. Let me just minimize this so that you can see what it looks like. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we've got participants' age in the x-axis and the different genders being represented. You want to see how different this is across groups. So you can't do this you could do it in a report if you want to. There's a way that you could create a report to do this. But if it's complicated, you can't do it in a report. You might as well use the API to sort of create some features that you might want to use to inform other people about what's going on in the project. So, and that is that. So if we go back to our API or Redcap project, so I think that's basically it for a demo. I think other things you might get to learn how complex this is. But feel free to always read your project setup button and also look at other functionality. And this also gives you a sort of guideline on some of the things that you might want to introduce into your study. And it's important to note that once your project is in production, there's certain things that you might not have access to changing, and you may have limitations. But it's important to always make sure that you add proper validation measures and ensure that your project is set up before it moves to production. So I think that is all for me. All the best.